The Bonafide residence in Wilton. This is Grant Putnam, Putnam Landscape Associates. So we had done the maintenance and also all the design of all the plants around the house for the previous owner about 2 years ago, and then we maintained the property ever since. So I'm just going to go through some different aspects of the property and the thought process behind it. So you have all these different plants. They all have different characteristics. They all bloom at different periods. Some of them bloom on last year's buds, meaning that the flowers are set up from last year, and some of them bloom on this year's new growth. And unless you're a designer and you can go around, you can name all the plants and know the characteristics of the plants, you're not going to know how to trim them at the correct time of the year. So first I'm going to go through some of these specialized services, ones that require a lot of expertise, and then we can talk about some of the more basic services such as lawn cutting. So anyway, from a trimming perspective, some plants have to be trimmed now, early spring. All your perennials and your grasses have to be trimmed now. Okay. Then typically late spring, and then throughout the summer and the fall, you're trimming different plants at different periods. This way you're not damaging the plants and you're not removing the flowers. So there's definitely a lot of expertise on knowing how to properly do that. Okay. As far as mulching goes, mulch decomposes about 1 inch a year. So you end up putting down, roughly 1 inch of topsoil every year to replace what's decomposed from the previous year. Plus it gives you fresh color in the beds. Okay. So by doing that, you're also covering the drip line zones, these drip line that waters the plants. So that's something that should be done every year. Plus it's cheaper to mulch than it is not to mulch and have to deal with a lot of weeds, because weeding is very time consuming. Okay. For the irrigation system, what you're typically doing is you're opening the system in the spring, you're inspecting everything, meaning that you're opening each zone individually, checking each zone, making sure there's any breaks, and then repairing the system in the spring. Because if you have a break, for example, in the drip line, if it breaks and you don't know it's broken, and someone professional doesn't check that out, what happens is you get a leak, and the leak will then kill the plant because there's too much water coming out. And plants hate too much water. So you have to be aware that irrigation system also affects the health of your plants and your trees. Then typically for an irrigation, we're also adjusting the clock throughout the season. Most irrigation companies don't do that, nor do they know the symptoms of overwatering or underwatering the plants. So for example, they can't look at a plant and say, okay, there's too much water. Whereas because we're landscape designers and we focus on knowing plants and lawn, we can diagnose if there's an overwatering or underwatering issue. So it's almost like an insurance policy. When we're coming to the property doing the lawn fertilizing, we're also checking for overwatering or disease or insect issues with your plants and trees. Most lawn fertilizing companies or technicians are not trained in knowing how to do that. Typically also an irrigation company will charge you like one fee to come visit the property one time in the summer to adjust your clock. And their fee is usually the same amount of money that we're charging to come adjust it multiple times. So it's a competitive advantage on our part, being here on a higher frequency, checking out the health, plants, trees, lawn, overwatering, underwatering, and adjusting the clock as needed. All right. From a lawn fertilizing perspective, what we do, let's see here, we do 5 other lawns in the neighborhood. So we do Mrs. Nobumoto's house, which was complete weeds last year. There was no lawn. We renovated the lawn last fall, and it's actually looking pretty good now. We do Mrs. Killian's house, which is the bottom left one on the street. And then we do number 19 Briardale and number 2 Briardale. We do both of those houses. They previously had like a basic lawn cutting company do it. The problem is the lawn cutting companies that will offer that service are not licensed, meaning they don't know the dangers of the pesticides or the chemicals that are used. and they don't have any prior training as far as knowing how to properly do it. They just come here, throw down the fertilizer, and call it a day. And with lawn fertilizer and lawn care, it takes a lot of expertise and requires doing the right processes, making sure you're going to get results. So this lawn in particular is very tricky because the whole backyard has ledge, has rock right underneath the surface of the lawn. So the water has to be turned on like almost every day during the summer to keep it from drying out. And it just has to be really paid attention to because there's not a deep amount of topsoil for the roots to grow. For plant and tree health care, I had mentioned you've got a lot of boxwoods, which are these green plants. Those get something called leaf miner insect. So typically what we do is we treat those in the spring to prevent that. It's literally the most prevalent insect issue for plants. And if you don't do it, you usually always get an issue and then they look really bad. These are really expensive plants. So, I mean, they range from anywhere from $150 to $350 a piece based on the size. So you have a huge investment right now in those, and I really suggest treating those in the spring, fertilizing them in the spring, and treating them to prevent the insect issue. And then, you know, basically you have other plants in the property too that do get insect issues. So usually what we do is we spray horticultural oil during the summer and the fall, which is designed to smother any insect population on the plant, right? So that's part of that. And we also do deep root fertilizing, which basically you take a deep root needle and you inject fertilizer down into the root systems around all the shrubs and plants in your property. So that's your plant and tree health care, okay? For going back to the lawn for a moment, with the lawn, you're going to need to get down grass seed. Considering it's existing lawn, I would core aerate it and throw down grass seed. Just don't throw seed on top of the soil. That won't do anything. All right, especially if it's existing lawn where it's compacted like this. You want to double, triple core aerate it, which is like a machine that pulls little plugs out of the ground, and then seed it. Okay, so the front yard is going to need that. You're obviously going to need topsoil to replace where you're grinding these stumps. Make sure the stump grinding company goes a minimum 10 inches below grade, below the level of the lawn. All right, and then whoever you decide to use for a landscaper, whether it's us or someone else, you also got to make sure that all the stump grindings, all those wood chips that they grind up, have to be removed, and then all new topsoil goes in, because the old wood chips release ammonium, and that will not allow any new grass seed to grow. Now, I see that as a constant problem all the time. Okay. In regards to basic services, I did mention that what you can do, we have two different types of clients, right? So we've got clients that hire us only for the specialty licensed services, such as lawn fertilizing, tick spraying, shrub and tree health spraying, and trimming the shrubs. So we have some clients that only hire us to do the specialty services that are licensed. And then those same clients perhaps hire a lower cost provider to cut the grass, do the spring cleanup, fall cleanup, and weed. Okay. The way the industry works is you got all these different Spanish companies and other small landscapers. And what they do is they're able to reduce their costs by paying all their employees in cash, not having to pay workers' compensation, not paying payroll taxes. It basically saves them about 25% by doing that. So what a lot of clients do is they use the strategy of using a low-cost provider to do the basic services, and then hire someone like us who's experts on the other services and licensed services that require a lot of expertise to get good results. They'll hire us to do the more specialized services. So just kind of walking around the property, you got a bunch of white pines in the back. I think those are fine. Forsythia. These are all lilacs along the deck. That's a big viburnum. 2 cherry trees, 2 dogwood trees, butterfly bush, Nepeta, barberry, oak leaf hydrangea in the back. These are green velvet boxwoods, also known as dwarf boxwoods. Japanese maple, vinca, grasses, American boxwood. You got to make sure you tie these. There's some damage. There's some holes in some of these boxwoods because the snow. So you got to tie these before the winter. All these perennials have to be trimmed now. You need to get your spring cleanup done before you do your seeding. The hydrangea, these are macrophylla hydrangeas, so if you get a really bad winter, then sometimes all the branches above the ground die. You won't get flowers until September. Judging by the fact you see the growth is coming on the bottom, I think this year you're only going to get the growth coming from the root system, and I think you're going to end up clipping all the branches. But I would wait like another 2 to 3 weeks just to make sure there's no growth that are coming out of the branches. All right, these, again, you might not get blooms until September this year. Typically you'll get blooms middle of July. The tree hydrangea has to be clipped back at least 50%. And that will grow almost, the branches will grow almost 3.5 feet this year. Those are covered with blooms. They're absolutely beautiful. That's the tree hydrangea. Okay. And like I said, you're going to want to get some spring seeding done. And the first lawn treatment would prevent weeds from germinating the lawn, like done right away. Because if you miss that first window for your first lawn treatment, you're going to get weeds growing all through the lawn. And the lawn, you're going to have to deal with that all summer. So I'll get back to you with a quote right away on that. So that's about it. So I'm gonna shoot this over to you, and we'll take it from there. Thanks for the opportunity.